Musashi is an outcast, deemed an ugly, disgusting, pathetic loser by his village. He lost his parents to a sickness that spread through the village, but instead of receiving sympathy, the villagers felt it was justified because Musashi's parents never believed in the village masters called Oni. According to the law, Musashi had to be taken in by his relatives, but his uncle initially refused. Musashi knelt at their front door for days until they finally decided to take him in. Grateful, Musashi promised to help with chores as much as he could. However, the family imposed strict rules: avoid any attention and never speak to his parents' friends again. When Musashi questioned this, he received a beating. He agreed to follow the rules, but one day, noticing his uncle forgot his lunch, he decided to deliver it, only to receive a massive beating in return. From then on, Musashi lived in silence, feeling like an outsider, wishing someone would notice and value him. One day, he saw a young kid named Kojiro practicing sword skills. Kojiro hid his sword because he was from a Bushi family, which was highly discriminated against in the village. Instead of judging Kojiro, Musashi was impressed and wanted to learn as well. They became best friends, training and playing together. For the first time, Kojiro had a friend and wasn't alone anymore. As years passed, Musashi started attending school, where he learned about history and ruled by humans, a place of peace and order. But one fateful day, the Kishin descended from the sky and overthrew the human rulers. Lords and warriors fell one after the other, succumbing to the might of the Kishin. Only one group of warriors, known today as the Band of Bushi, remained courageous enough to continue fighting against these invaders. In present times, the people of Hinamoto worship the Kishin blindly, with only a few exceptions. Among them is a miner apprentice named Musashi. At the mining school where he studies, Musashi is celebrated as the best student. Despite this, he only pretends to be happy. The students are taught that the Bushi were violent people who once destroyed the world. But Musashi knows this is a lie. His friend, Kojiro, is the son of a former Bushi member who has told them the true story. The Bushi are actually trying to defeat the Kishin and reclaim human freedom. Inspired by these stories, Musashi and Kojiro vow to form their own Bushi band one day. As the present story unfolds, Musashi visits Kojiro. Although he is set to officially become a miner the next day, Musashi reveals that he still wants to fight the demons, as they had promised each other in their childhood. Kojiro discourages him, pointing out the discrimination against the Bushi and suggesting that Musashi would be better off leading an ordinary life. Determined to prove his seriousness, Musashi decides to take action. In town, Kojiro is ostracized because of his Bushi heritage. On the day of the entrance ceremony, Musashi's class is shown where they will serve the demon masters. However, they soon discover that the demons are ruthless and intend to enslave them for life, threatening to eat them if they disobey. Seizing this opportunity to fight, Musashi finds a mining axe and confronts a demon, but he is quickly overpowered. Just as he is about to be eaten, Kojiro arrives in time to save him, scolding Musashi but also giving him back his confiscated weapon. With newfound determination, Musashi and Kojiro fight together. Musashi uses a technique from his notebook, launching himself like a vortex to slice the demon. As more demons transform, the duo fights bravely and deepens their bond. Suddenly, they see a sign of a Kishin descending from the sky. Riding their Katsu mount, they head towards the Kishin. As they approach, Kojiro reveals his lack of enthusiasm about becoming a Bushi, but Musashi motivates him. They find the Kishin, a small creature that Musashi easily cuts in two, but it regenerates instantly. The Kishin loyalists arrive with metal offerings, which the Kishin consumes, transforming into a massive giant. In the ensuing chaos, Musashi falls unconscious. The Kishin attempts to take Kojiro's sword, but he clings to it, remembering his father's advice to never let go of his Bushi pride. Despite his efforts, the Kishin swallows the sword. Enraged, Musashi leaps onto the Kishin, digging for the sword as he dodges attacks. He eventually finds it, emerging from the Kishin's stomach, much to everyone's surprise. Their triumph is short-lived as a Bushi fortress descends nearby. The Bushi leader tells Musashi and Kojiro to leave the dangerous area, but they assert their victory over the Kishin. The leader points out the Kishin regenerating once more, explaining that it takes an entire band to fully defeat a Kishin. Musashi, undeterred, charges back into battle despite Kojiro's pleas. Meanwhile, Captain Naotora of the Takeda band prepares his group to defeat the Kishin. Musashi's solo efforts are fruitless against the regenerating creature. He is pulled back into the Takeda band's base, where Naotora explains that it requires a collective effort to bring down a Kishin. He advises Musashi to give up, but Musashi refuses. Breaking free from his restraints, Musashi rejoins the battle. As the Bushi prepare to attack the Kishin's core, Musashi uses a technique that makes the mountain crumble, signaling his relentless spirit and determination to fight for freedom. As the battle rages on, Musashi's rash actions disrupt the Bushi's formation, causing their attack to miss. Charging forward, Kojiro informs Musashi that he must cut the Kishin's horn. Musashi quickly slashes at it, but to his shock, his weapon shatters instantly. Meanwhile, the Kishin prepares to attack Musashi. In a swift move, Naotora appears and slices the horn effortlessly, causing the Kishin to disintegrate. The Bushi members absorb its powers, which manifest as shining dust particles. Later, Captain Naotora reassures the people of their protection, boasting that he had slain their Kishin. However, the elders accuse the Bushi of pointlessly resisting the demons for 150 years, dragging innocent people into the conflict without driving away the Kishin. Naotora calmly assures them that the Kishin will be annihilated and freedom will return in his generation. Before departing, Naotora acknowledges Musashi and Kojiro's efforts, despite them not being properly trained Bushi, which annoys Musashi. He throws a tantrum, calling the Bushi kill-stealing samurais. Impressed, Naotora hands Musashi a crystal before leaving. At home, Musashi and Kojiro discover that the crystal is a compass used in a map to find demons around the province. The map reveals that there are hundreds of Kishin, each with a name. They also find a prophecy of a hero who will unite the land to battle the Kishin. Musashi decides to meet Naotora, declaring that he will be the one to unite the land instead. The next day, Musashi and Kojiro venture into the outside world for the first time. They promise to always get along, no matter what happens. However, after a few days, they run out of fuel and food, leading to bickering. Kojiro proves his competence by fishing, but Musashi, annoyed, tries and fails at fishing himself. Returning, he finds Kojiro injured on the ground. Suddenly, a girl attacks Musashi from behind, demanding all their valuables, including the Ketsu mount. Musashi easily overpowers her, but they continue to fight. Despite her weak attacks, she managed to beat Kojiro by playing her feminine card to seduce him. She waits for an opening to use her knife, but Musashi doesn't fall for it. Realizing she is running out of time, she steals their bike and heads home. At her home, the girl, named Tsugumi, apologizes to her lord for failing to steal more. Hearing she managed to steal a Ketsu mount, Lord Hideo of the Kasumitsu band is pleased with Tsugumi. Musashi and Kojiro track the bike to the Kasumitsu band's entrance, where they find Tsugumi. She shows them their bike and reveals an entire town inside the fortress. She explains that all Bushi fortresses are like this, with villagers providing everything the Bushi need, such as weapons and food. She also shares that she once had a sister who protected her but died in battle. At night, Lord Hideo treats Musashi and Kojiro to a welcome feast. He asks them to join his band in clearing the demons in the area, offering to share the Ketsu. When they admit they don't know what Ketsu is, Hideo is disheartened and calls them useless, ordering Tsugumi to tie them up. They are locked away in a cell. Later, it is revealed that Hideo traumatizes Tsugumi, making her do his bidding without question. He plans to mobilize the entire village to fight the next time demons appear, including children and the elderly. Tsugumi tries to argue but cannot oppose him as he is all she has. She later explains to Musashi and Kojiro that the Ketsu is the shining dust absorbed from the Kishin. Tsugumi struggles to maintain a strong front, and Musashi and Kojiro encourage her to speak up. She sobs internally, not wanting the villagers to fight but unable to voice her feelings. As demons approach the castle, Kojiro helps Musashi and himself escape their cell. Outside, they find Tsugumi ordered to equip the villagers. In tears, she opposes Hideo's plan. When Hideo tries to hit her, he suddenly begins sobbing, playing a mind game before threatening to throw her out of the band, rendering her compliant again. After Hideo leaves, Tsugumi gains new courage from looking at her sister's photo but remains conflicted, feeling like Hideo's puppet. As she struggles with her thoughts, Musashi and Kojiro arrive on the scene. Musashi and Kojiro encourage Tsugumi in their own way, helping her regain her confidence. They then devise a plan to save the villagers from certain death. Meanwhile, the Lord delivers a speech about self-sacrifice, causing the villagers to panic. However, they can't escape because his soldiers have blocked the exits. At that moment, Tsugumi creates a smokescreen and tries to convince the Lord to stop his madness. He soon realizes she is stalling for time, but it's too late. Musashi and Kojiro have already incapacitated the guards. Surprisingly, the terrified villagers do not flee. Seeing this, Tsugumi decides to confront the Lord directly. He indulges her, and a battle ensues. The Lord quickly overpowers her, using the skills he initially taught her. He stomps her repeatedly for her insolence while the villagers watch in horror. As he rants, Tsugumi spits in his face and rises to continue the fight. This time, they activate their blades. She uses her whip to restrain him and forces him down, allowing the villagers to escape. As demons approach, Tsugumi resigns herself to perish, her life flashing before her eyes. At that moment, Musashi rescues her. Early the next morning, Musashi spots a Kishin stealing Kojiro's sword and chases after it. He strikes its horn, but it doesn't budge. Following it, he arrives at a plain full of katanas, where a strange man in black asks if he wants to borrow a katana. Seeing the Kishin about to consume Kojiro's sword, Musashi grabs one, immediately causing crystals to grow from his body. He manages to overcome the sensation and uses the immense power to defeat the Kishin. Afterward, he begins absorbing its Ketsu, but the katana soon shatters. The man tells him not to worry about the broken sword, and a comrade appears, urging them to leave. The man, shown to have a fetish for Ketsu blades, apologizes and departs. Just then, Kojiro and Tsugumi arrive at the scene. Musashi notices all the katanas have disappeared. He tells them what happened, but they don't believe him. Tsugumi then informs them they need to get their own Ketsu blades, the only weapons capable of destroying a Kishin's horn. They head to a trade center specifically for purchasing Bushi-related goods. While eating, they realize they forgot to name their band. Tsugumi reveals they also need to choose a captain. Musashi suggests Kojiro for the role since he doesn't have a family name, which means the captain's family name will also be the band's name. They agree on this. Shortly after, it's time for the Ketsu blade auction. The headsmith, Osafune Mitsuru, tells them to choose any blade they are drawn to and explains that since it's their first time, they must go through a ritual. Everyone positions themselves near their chosen blades. Musashi selects a plain blade, while Kojiro chooses one that no one else is interested in. To begin the auction, they must grab their swords. When Musashi grabs his, he starts glowing. Others experience the same, and Mitsuru explains that they are undergoing the sword trial, where the sword chooses its master. When Kojiro grabs his blade, he is overwhelmed by a pulse of intense energy, causing his life events to flash before his eyes. After overcoming his past, the blade accepts him, and he glows blue. Others also pass with different colors, and Mitsuru explains that the color signifies the soul of the individual Bushi. She adds that blue is the most common color, symbolizing the normal soul. While red is the strongest soul color, Musashi faces a traumatic memory during his trial, the day Kojira's dad died. He is taken to a void where he finds a girl who suddenly transforms into a beast, telling him she doesn't need him. His body fills with black crystals, ending the test. Despite repeated attempts until nightfall, the same thing happens. Mitsuru then informs him that those with black souls cannot wield a Katsu blade, explaining it's as impossible as breathing underwater or surviving in flames. She tells him to give up on becoming a Bushi. As Musashi sits on the ground, frustrated, Kojira and Tsugumi try to cheer him up. They are interrupted by a lesser demon attacking Musashi, who spaces out, unable to fight. Kojira saves him just in time. Demons then begin attacking on sight, and Kojira defends the people, easily defeating the demons with his newly awakened power. Musashi watches as everyone praises Kojira and Tsugumi for their contributions, feeling left out and lonely. The rest of the warriors head to the mountains to continue the battle, but Musashi stays behind, lamenting his failure. He suddenly remembers using the Katsu blade before they arrive. The man in black reappears, revealing he saw everything and inviting Musashi to join him, as he too has a black crystal. The man expresses joy at finding someone who can house the black stone, which usually hinders people from using the Katsu blade. He tells Musashi that by accepting his past and feelings, he can become very strong. To demonstrate, he uses his blade to create a massive hole in the ground and tells Musashi to grab a blade, promising it will turn him into an incredibly strong Katsu blade. Musashi freaks out, not wanting to become a sword, but the man in black doesn't understand. He then threatens to turn Musashi's friends into sword materials too, causing Musashi to lose his cool and fall into the hole. As the group of Bushi moves up the mountain, Tsugumi asks Kojira if it's okay to leave Musashi alone. Kojira believes Musashi should overcome his weakness and bounce back on his own. Tsugumi speculates that Musashi might have inherited a special power, explaining his difficulties. Kojira reveals Musashi's origin, explaining that his parents were normal farmers. During his childhood, Musashi was the only villager who didn't despise Kojira for wielding a sword. Musashi's parents didn't mind associating with a Bushi, making Tsugumi wonder why the Katsu blade rejected him. Later, the man in black, called Nyakai Shiro, meets his pupil Nano, revealing he found the obsidian goddess inside Musashi. Meanwhile, Musashi continues to fail in the pit, eventually forced to use a blade that begins crystallizing his body. As he struggles, he hears a voice saying she can't allow that. Overwhelmed by the crystal, he falls into lava and his consciousness is taken to another dimension, where the obsidian goddess holds him hostage. She shows him his past, where his parents died and he was scorned for being friendly to a Bushi. Forced to live with relatives under harsh conditions, he was beaten for asking why Bushi are hated and forbidden from leaving the house. One day, he went to deliver his uncle's forgotten lunch and was beaten by the villagers again. After a life of loneliness and neglect, a woman told him to show loyalty by throwing a stone at Kojira's dad. Overwhelmed by pressure, he complied, throwing the rock and cursing him. The goddess decided he was unworthy to wield a Katsu blade because he saw everything as a means to survive and feel wanted by friends. She reveals she is showing him these memories to break his will, wishing to stay hidden forever to avoid capture by the enemy. At the mountain peak, Tsugumi and the others find the Kishin has already been slain, but she argues it might still be alive since it hasn't turned into Katsu particles. Shiro then appears, claiming he killed the Kishin. When the other Bushi demand proof, he slays a man, revealing himself as a sword hunter who only came to steal their blades. Displaying godlike powers, he stops their attacks and instills fear in the survivors. Moving to attack Kojira, he reveals he heard his name from Musashi, who is now almost fully transformed into black crystals. Musashi is drawn out of the lava, having not completely transformed, as Nana had thought. Remembering his friends might be in danger, he rushes toward the mountain. He recalls feeling mortified after throwing a stone at Kojira's dad and later apologizing. Kojira's father told him to let go of his guilt, as Musashi once saved Kojira from depression. He encouraged Musashi and offered him a place in their family, filling the void in Musashi's heart. At the mountain, Shiro continues annihilating everyone and targets Kojira. To save others, Kojira makes himself bait and attacks Shiro, who easily nullifies the attack and puts Kojira down with a ground-splitting strike. As Shiro is about to kill Kojira, he stops, shocked to see Musashi. The group is happy to see Musashi, although he admits he still can't use a Ketsu blade. Nana shows up and admits to helping Musashi unknowingly, but Shiro isn't mad, anticipating the goddess's next move. As Nana charges her attack, the group gives up hope, but Musashi strengthens their resolve. They are hyped to fight together as a band, but the mood changes when Nana reveals her 7-bladed Ketsu blade. She attacks with multiple blades while everyone tries to avoid them. Musashi propels himself to close the distance, but she counters his move. They regroup to plan a new strategy to break her weapons. Soon, they spring into action again. Musashi and Tsugumi flee behind Kojira, knowing Musashi is the main target. Tsugumi uses her whips to hold Nano's blades in place, allowing Musashi to shatter one. Despite their motivation, Nano brags about her blades. However, Shiro interrupts the fight, looking down on Nano and stating he would never fight alongside her. He makes a blade ring, shocking Tsugumi, who realizes he hasn't used his Ketsu blade's power. As he swings his sword, a barrier forms around the mountain, inverting it and causing everyone to fall to their deaths. Some manage to hold on to the roof. Seeing survivors, Shiro begins cleaning up the trash, revealing he isn't like other Bushi who need to band together. Kojira disagrees, angering Shiro, who makes everyone drop. As they fall, time stops, and the goddess speaks to Musashi. She reveals Shiro wants to kill Musashi to obtain her powers and uses her remaining strength to ensure he survives. Musashi refuses to survive alone, convincing her to save his comrades. She entrusts her powers to Musashi and draws everyone's blades together using a black crystal, summoning the energy of all Ketsu blades present. The goddess appears, confronts Shiro, takes his blade, and turns the mountain back to normal. She explains to Kojira that people with black crystals can attract or repel blade energy, which people like Musashi don't understand. Revealing her powers are fading, she urges Kojira to protect Musashi when she goes back to sleep. The battle resumes with Shiro begging her to take his side, but she refuses. She summons the energies of the Bushi, combines them, and attacks Shiro, disintegrating everything in her path and leveling the mountain. Afterward, Musashi returns to normal as the sword he used breaks. Mitsuru explains this happens when a blade channels too much energy. Grateful for their lives, the group offers to make a new blade for Musashi. They notice a hole in the Kishin's body, revealing Shiro managed to escape with the Kishin. After the battle, a special Bushi funeral is conducted using their Ketsu blades mounted on the ground. The next day, Musashi decides to retake the sword trials. As Musashi prepares for the trial again, the crowd murmurs with hope that he will succeed this time. Tsugumi notes he is trying with the same sword he has been failing with, but Mitsuru reveals it is the best blade available. When it's time for the trial, Musashi gives a heartwarming speech that inspires everyone in the crowd. He picks up his blade, which glows bright red, the strongest color. Everyone is hyped by this sight. Away from the crowd, Musashi tells Kojira about his visions, suggesting that Kojira's father might have a connection to the goddess. However, Kojira has no idea about it. They theorize that since Jisai had a Ketsu mount, he must have been part of a band. Troubled by this new discovery, Kojira realizes he knew little about his father. Later, with a map of the country, Kojira decides they will go east. The group gets lost in a swamp, leading to bickering between Kojira and Tsugumi. Musashi offers to ride the bike being towed and eventually notices that they have been captured by a swamp demon. He unsheathes his sword and manages to break the demon's horn, freeing everyone. Musashi then frees the last captive, a pretty lady who thanks him for saving her. Shortly after, a man named Chamberlain runs to the lady's aid, addressing her as a princess. She is introduced as Mikeru, the daughter of the head of Bushi. They are heading to Harem, a port where numerous Bushi bands have gathered for a significant battle. As they accompany the princess, Musashi notices she seems upset and tries to make her talk, but Chamberlain reveals they are heading to the port summoned by the leader of the Usuki Alliance. On a bumpy road, Musashi and Mikeru fall off, but she uses her Katsu blade to make them float. She apologizes for ignoring him, explaining she doesn't know how to interact with people. She suggests they go with them to the port since their original destination is an island that is a Kishin itself. She explains that this Kishin was the first to appear in Hinamoto, leading humans to worship it and mine ore for it, which it consumed, growing enormous. Chamberlain adds that the Alliance aims to defeat this Kishin, sounding positive since the leader has gathered a powerful force. After Mikeru leaves, the group re-evaluates their journey on the map. Sugumi notes the map carries the seal of the Usugi band, indicating Kojira's dad was part of it. Meanwhile, at the port, different bands have assembled in respect to the Alliance. Elsewhere, Nano, who is shopping, is contacted by her black crystals and joins a meeting of a group of 8. Shiro reveals he has located the obsidian goddess, and they plot to keep it out of the hands of the other Bushi. Kojira's group then heads to the port to learn more about his late father. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's anime recap. Please remember to drop a like and subscribe so you never miss another video. Until next time, take care.